Warning: this podcast discusses paranormal activity and other topics some might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everybody.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. This is Ashley.
And this is Daniel.
And welcome to Ghost Gossip.
Welcome, y'all.
We have a little bit of a different episode. I've been trying to branch out and try new things.
Yes.
Because I don't get ghost stories just when I want them.
Right.
No matter how much I manifest them, I can't just stumble upon ghost stories from other people.
Kind of like ghost encounters. They don't always just happen when you want them to.
I don't understand the whole YouTube thing, how they always catch some encounters unless it's all fake.
I think most of it is fake, if not probably 99.8% maybe.
It probably is, but I do enjoy them so much and I fall asleep to them.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
Most of them annoy me.
It's okay.
It's almost like reality TV, but worse.
Yeah, I can see that, and that's okay. But I enjoy it. You know, I don't watch a lot of trash TV. I don't watch TV.
That's true. No. I like the movies.
I know. You and movies. I can't get into the movies. I'm not a movie person.
I've always been very film oriented. Those are the dogs.
Those are the dogs. We have dogs behind us. We have a weed eater outside. We have no children, but we have other things to make up for the noise factor.
Yes.
No matter how I try to soundproof this room, it's just not going. And then your phone's vibrating. So
it's because of the cameras, because of all the action going on outside the house.
The weed eater?
Maybe the weed eater.
I put mine on Do Not Disturb.
It may be Leo with his blue back.
Oh gosh, it looks like he was part of a gender reveal.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, was he over at a gender reveal yesterday that we didn't know anything about?
Was he invited and we weren't?
Yeah.
That's funny. But he wasn't.
It was the
chalk.
Blue chalk.
The blue chalk on the
driveway. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was so funny because Daniel goes outside to feed the cats this morning and he's like, Ashley, why is Leo blue? I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, was he a part of a gender reveal?
So Leo is our outside cat.
He's all white.
He's all white. He is a total boss cat.
Minus his eyebrows. He has black eyebrows.
Does he? I didn't even know. Do cats have eyebrows? He has
eyebrows, yes.
Does he get them done? Maybe next door?
Maybe I should ask. Maybe I should ask who his eyebrow person is. But yes, he has little grayish black eyebrows. And those are the only color on his body. And then his eyes are blue and green. They're two separate colors.
He does have the gray dot on his head and the gray dot on his tail.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of and not eyebrows. I could have sworn he had little eyebrows.
I'm just picturing these big, thick Turkish eyebrows on our white cat. And it's very comical. And him
making eyes at you hey, Dad.
Yes. Hello.
No, Leo, I call him Leo the Wonder Cat because he literally goes wherever he wants and there's the weed eater. He does what he wants to do and he doesn't give up. Seriously.
His name is Leonidas. So he is a warrior.
He is. And our cat, episode is not about our cat, but I'm going to tell you about our cat. Anyway, he came home one day with a hole in his head. And yes. I was like, Daniel,
a large
puncture wound. He looked like he had a
like he'd been shot with a pellet gun.
Yeah, he had a hole in his head. Yeah. And I was like, Daniel, something's wrong with the cat. Oh, he's fine. I'm like,
it's like whole head was swelled up too.
No, babe, there's something wrong with the cat. We need to take him to the vet. And we found out later that he had gotten to a fight with a hawk, a bird of prey or a predator.
He drug it into the yard the next day.
He killed it.
Yeah, he killed it, and it was a large hawk.
Yes, he killed a hawk. We're not trying to say kill hawks. That's not what I'm saying. But the cat and the hawk got into a fight, and Leo killed it.
Yeah, cats generally don't come out on the winning end of that fight.
Yes, and the worst he had was a hole in his head, and it healed up beautifully, and he is still a beast. And the other night, it was probably about 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
That's about a month ago.
I think it was a little longer than that.
We can check the cameras. I think it was about a month ago.
It was longer than that. And we heard Leo screaming outside at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and I shot up out of bed and took off outside. And Daniel's like, what's happening? What's happening? Following behind me in his underwear.
Yes, outside, y'all.
And I take off down the hill to check Leo, and he is rolling down the hill fighting something. And we don't know what it was.
It was either a possum or a raccoon.
And he cornered whatever it was behind the house in somebody else's yard. And we just made sure it wasn't our other cat. And he kind of gangs up on her sometimes. And we can't keep her in. We tried to keep her in.
Yes, Leo
she will
is
not stay, and she's sneaky. She gets out. And so we were making sure it wasn't her, and it was not her. It was some wild animal that he had attacked. He's a boss.
He is the boss.
He is the MVP of our animals. He really is an underappreciated boss. Like, he takes care of himself. He probably has 5 families.
Bowing down before him.
Yes, they all love him. And he probably has 5 different names. I don't know why he hasn't come home with a collar yet. But anyway, so today what we're talking about, we're doing something a little different, like I said. And I'm talking about what is known to be a haunted location in South Carolina. Kind of what I did last week for a short story.
Yeah.
But this is, instead of a person, this is a place.
Keeping it
local because South Carolina has a lot of rich history.
Yes, it does.
And there's a lot of paranormal, alleged haunted places in South Carolina.
I just thought of this, but if you go back throughout South Carolina's history, there are episodes or experiences throughout its history with hauntings, with supernatural events and stuff like that throughout the different eras of the state's history.
I think that's probably most states, but absolutely there is, like, especially because of the role that South Carolina played in the war, the Civil War. There were so many battles throughout South Carolina.
In the colonial days.
Absolutely. And it's crazy. It's just crazy because I was just trying to keep it local, trying to find something, and my ADHD was running wild. And I told Daniel, like, I cannot focus on one place, and then I found it.
So what'd you find?
It's called the South Carolina State Hospital. It was also known as the South Carolina Lunatic Asylum.
Or in South Carolina, there's only 2 words that you had to say that people would know exactly what you're talking about.
And I have that in here.
Bull Street. If somebody said, I'm going to take you to Bull Street, take you to the crazy
We are taking you to the asylum. You have done something, and you are going to Bull Street.
Bull Street, yeah.
So the South Carolina State Hospital is in Columbia, South Carolina, and is the former home of the South Carolina State Mental Health Hospital. It was known as the South Carolina Lunatic Asylum, and it also had a little extended name, but you can Google it. I'm not going to say it on this podcast. It was very inappropriate.
Oh, I'm interested to see what
you can
that
Google it because I'm not going to say it here.
Okay.
You know, when I don't like something, I just don't say it, so I'm not going to say it. If you live in Columbia or in South Carolina, you might have heard it referred to as Bull Street. Mm-hmm. It probably still remains one of those, like you said, if you mess up, we're going to take you to Bull Street. If you do something wrong, we're going to take you to Bull Street. When I went to college, that's kind of, because I went to USC in Columbia, that's when I learned about Bull Street. And we didn't call it the South Carolina State Hospital. We didn't call it the mental hospital or the lunatic. We called it Bull Street.
Yeah.
So Bull Street, or the state hospital, was actually approved to be built, and it was funded in 1821.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And it was approved. Do you have any guess of how much it cost to build the hospital, the first actual structure for Bull Street?
I'm going to guess $10,000.
$30,000.
Okay.
They approved $30,000 in funding, which in today's money equals $804,000 roughly.
Okay.
So they built the facility, and now they built the facility in different
stages,
right? And so they started with the main building, and they opened it and built it just for mental illness, just to treat mental illness.
Back then, could have been a whole host of things.
Right, because if a woman didn't listen to her husband, she was mentally ill.
Well,
you know what? Don't you start with me, Daniel Scott. Don't you start with me. In 1828, the South Carolina Lunatic Asylum was complete. The name was later changed to the South Carolina State Hospital. In the beginning, the patients were billed based on their ability to pay. So the people with money usually received better treatment because they could afford it.
And they paid.
They did. And as you know, back in the day, money wasn't readily available.
Mm-hmm.
And so they relied heavily on state funding. Before long, the hospital experienced overcrowding and needed to expand.
As most places like that throughout the country's history, that's been kind of what's happened with those types of facilities.
And absolutely. And then when you have overcrowding, you have worse treatment, which we'll get into. So in 1857, the state purchased more land surrounding the building, which is what we know to be Bull Street.
Right.
Because if you are in Columbia,
it's a compound.
It is huge.
Mm-hmm.
If you were on, Elmwood and Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Assembly? I can't remember. It's been a long time since I lived there.
I think it is.
But if you're going, like you're going to go to 77 and you hit it's Elmwood. It's Elmwood. You'll get on Elmwood and you go straight like you're going to 77, like you're leaving town.
Mm-hmm.
And it dead ends into the state hospital. You can't go any further. If you go straight, you're going into the mental hospital parking lot. That's Bull Street.
Maybe I'm thinking about going in on the backside or something.
Maybe. But
because I went there for a different reason.
Oh, we'll get to that. We were talking about it
I wasn't a patient.
Are you sure?
Maybe.
So you made me lose my train of thought. So in 1857, they purchased more land surrounding it, and they started the Babcock Building, which was named after the hospital superintendent, James Woods Babcock. The hospital was constructed in 4 stages, and it was completed in 1885. The impressive building spanned over 250,000 square feet.
The architecture of the building is very, very cool.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but it's haunting. And I'm not saying it's haunted right now, but I'm saying if you've ever seen that building, it gives eerie vibes.
Yes, it is imposing.
It is very imposing. It's big and it's long.
It's
and
tall.
It's tall. It's
what, 3 or 4 stories?
I didn't see how many stories, but 250,000 square feet. That's a big building.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge building.
Yeah.
However, regardless of the newly added space, the hospital was still overcrowded, and eventually the state took over funding the hospital. With only state funding available, the quality of care and treatment diminished.
Went way down.
Yes, it went
for sure.
downhill because they were no longer receiving funding from the people that family members were there.
Right.
So it was said that family members would drop their mentally ill loved ones off, and they'd probably never see their family again.
Yeah.
Which is devastating.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially if you think about mental illness in today's standards, they thought learning disabilities or ADHD was mental illness. They thought an unruly woman who wouldn't listen was mentally ill, or epilepsy, or anything.
I mean, you think about, the mid 1800s, even up until the early 1900s, families had a lot of kids, and families were pressed to provide for themselves,
right,
and to survive.
Right.
And so I hate to say it this way, but this is just the way they looked at it. From their viewpoint, they didn't have the ability to take care of that person or know how to. I think in most cases, they thought they were doing the right thing.
They probably did. They didn't know what was going on behind closed doors either. Because you got to think about, social media didn't exist. The news only reported what they were told.
Yeah, most people didn't have cars.
Right.
So I mean, they probably took them there, thought that that's where they needed to be, and then that was the end of it.
Right. And they left them. And if they died, people dying back in the day, it was like, okay, that sucks, but they had to keep going. Life didn't stop. I mean, life doesn't stop now, but life really didn't stop because they had to keep providing.
And life expectancy was much lower.
Shorter than it is now. Well, at its peak, the building housed nearly 5,000 patients.
Wow.
And that was about in the 1950s. They were so overcrowded. The patients lived in the facility until the 1990s, and then the state announced they were closing the facility in 2003 officially. But I don't think they closed, because I was reading a Reddit story, and there was a nurse on there that said she did internships in 2014 at a child psych ward at Bull Street.
Well, they may have, the hospital probably closed, but they probably still used the buildings for other things.
Yeah.
But I think the hospital itself, I know, definitely closed about that time. Because it was some years before that I went.
Now, do you know what it is now?
Is it a museum?
No, it is apartments. 208 apartments
Oh,
It is a community now. People live there. And let me tell you, rent is steep. It is over $2,000 a month.
Them people crazy.
Them people crazy, yeah.
That building has always been full of crazy people.
You got that right.
It still is.
You couldn't pay me to live there.
I love like what they've done up here with the textile mills and turned them into apartments. Those are really cool.
They're beautiful. But can you imagine what we're going to talk about? Just living up in there.
It's kind of like if they took the TB hospital that was in Bowling Springs and turned that into apartments. Can you imagine?
No. There is actually a tuberculosis hospital in Greenville.
Well, that's the one in Bowling Springs that people used to. It was the old TB hospital.
How is it in Bowling Springs and it's in Greenville?
They had two.
Oh.
But they tore the one in like Bowling Springs, tore it down because people were going in there and a couple people got hurt.
Of course. It's dangerous. You don't want to go up in there. I
always wanted to go.
Well, I'm sure you always wanted to go, but we are not in our 20s anymore, and we cannot. We don't trespass, sir.
Can we go to the one in Greenville?
I don't think it's.
Is it still
open.
standing?
I don't think it is.
It's not standing?
I don't know if it's standing. I
don't care. I'm not asking if it's open.
Daniel will trespass in a minute. Now, no, I will leave him.
Me and Justin will go take some video for you.
Justin into this.
He's totally down.
I'm sure he is. He's wild. Yes, he's you, except Justin. So just so you know, before we get into what happened in this facility, today it was renovated in the 2020s, around 2022, I believe. Mm-hmm. And now it's 208 apartments. It has a gated pet park, a pool, 3.38 acres of green acreage like space, like living area outside, a workout studio, a yoga studio, resident lounges, a game room, and it's also the home of the Bull Street District. Within that district is Segra Park. That is the home of the Columbia Fireflies baseball team. So that baseball stadium is in that Bull Street District now.
You know, just from 80% of that description, it honestly sounds like not much has changed.
They also have a Starbucks, some gardens, an REI co-op store, and Iron Hill Brewery. Yeah, so it's like it sounds like that's where you want to be.
There's a game room.
There's a game room.
There's grounds.
There's grounds.
You know.
You can pay to live here.
It's fenced in.
It is fenced in.
So
Big old looming fences.
So yeah, that's funny to me.
Yes. And it's also the future home of this is funny. It's also the future home of the University of South Carolina Health and Sciences campus. Mm. So yes, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
If you don't know the area and you're not familiar with the building, you might think that sounds like everything. Like you don't even have to leave.
No.
You never have to leave. But there's some dark history. It is the nation's oldest surviving mental hospital structure. It was one of the first of its kind.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. 1828, you said?
1821 it was built.
1821, we became a country 1776. That's only 40 years.
Well, it went from a place where people sought...
50 years, excuse me.
It was once a place where the mentally ill, they sought treatment there, but it quickly became a shelter to the mentally ill. So they weren't treating them. It just became a place where they
were
now
housed.
Lived. Right.
Yeah.
In 1900, 1,000 plus patients were admitted to the asylum each year.
Wow.
Yes.
But a lot of them didn't stay. A lot of them were...
They died. Approximately 30% of their population died each year. I watched one TikTok and it said...
That's high turnover.
That is high turnover. And one TikToker said a lot of people went in. They never came out alive.
I mean, 30%.
30%. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That is a lot.
It's 1 in 3.
Due to the sheer number of patients being admitted, they were forced to live in close quarters and sleep in crowded dormitories. The deaths were due to a combination of poor care and inadequate supervision, and they were like killing each other. Former employees report suicides, rapes, assault, and other foul play taking place during their employment within the hospital. One doctor unalived herself after sewing a patient's mouth shut because he was cursing her out. And once the incident was reported, she killed herself.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, 3 nurses' aides were charged with failing to follow hospital protocol after a female patient was found deceased in seclusion in 1984. So this patient had been restrained. They were supposed to let her out of seclusion every 2 hours for exercise. That was their protocol. She had epilepsy. This is why I included this, because you know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
They put her in seclusion, but because they were overwhelmed with patients, they forgot about her.
How long did they leave her?
Well, one TikToker said weeks, what I read said restrained for 13 hours. So I don't know, but what I read was 13 hours. The nurse that was there, that was doing this article interview for, I'll link it. It was like the Greer Today paper. Mm-hmm. She said that it could have been prevented and that they did not check on her for a very long time. So wow. She wasn't very clear with how long a long time was, but one said 13 hours and another TikToker said weeks.
I wonder if they had her restrained for that long and then unrestrained her, but still
and then just left her
in a confined room.
Maybe. And they just didn't check on her and she died afterwards. Yeah. I don't know. The former nurse said the hospital actively worked to keep bad press out of the papers.
Oh, for sure. That absolutely.
There's also reports of harsh and cruel procedures such as electric shock therapy, lobotomies, and they would starve them.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was not a good place.
No, it wasn't. And because of the dark history that it has, it is said to be the most haunted in the state, possibly the entire Southeast. I tried to find hauntings, like stories of hauntings, and I cannot find any, like specific hauntings. But I did find that people hear disembodied voices, they see shadows, experience residual hospital sounds. Some have heard the screams of former patients, and then while they're walking through, they'll run into cold spots. They'll hear slamming doors. And one worker, while they were renovating, turning them into apartments, saw a man in old-timey clothes, and he kind of looked at him and turned around and walked through a wall.
Well, I'm sure and this is something we probably should keep an eye on, in the next 4 or 5 years, those residents are going to have some stories.
You would think, because they just finished it not too long ago. They're still working on it.
Because, until now, there really hasn't been people there. You know, it was always run as a hospital. And
then it was abandoned.
And then it was pretty much abandoned, right. And so, the people that lived there before were all insane and maltreated. And then it was abandoned. And so now you have these people moving in it, and I guarantee you over the next 5 or 10 years, there are going to be some crazy stories coming out there.
I'm sure. And one more fact, and then we'll kind of get into your stories, because I got really excited when Daniel said that he had stories from there, because of course he has stories from there. Of course my husband has stories. He's been there. But it is believed to be a burial site of many Civil War casualties. Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, look at that. So because I was trying to find actual stories, I got on Reddit, didn't find a ton. And then I got on TikTok. It wasn't a lot of stories, but I did watch some creators' videos, and they're saying that the hospital was one of the last known residences of the serial killer P.D. Gaskins, or
Pee Wee Gaskins. He liked to kill women with a machete in the woods.
Oh, that's terrifying.
He was very small, and that's why they called him Pee Wee, but he was a very prolific and brutal serial killer. He was
like the most prolific serial killer in South Carolina, correct?
Correct. I think, I want to say like...
of that time anyway.
Florence, Orangeburg, somewhere in there. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Another creator said the building was built so the patients could not see the moon because they believed the moon caused lunacy. Did you know that?
I did not.
I love the moon.
It's lunacy.
It's also believed that the hospital staff euthanized patients. I did not see that anywhere. I just want to put that out there. I did not read that anywhere, but I watched a video and a creator said that it is believed that the hospital actually euthanized patients.
That's not shocking.
But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they did.
No.
One creator said that the hospital strongly denies ever doing lobotomies. But an urban explorer, when they went into the building, they found a room that had intact chairs, the hats they had,
the halos,
and the actual lobotomy tools in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that is what I found about this hospital. And I just, like I said, I wish I had more ghost stories, but that's what I found. And it just, I never really knew. I knew it was creepy. I knew I didn't want to go in there. I knew I didn't like ever being at the stoplight at Elmwood and Bull Street. I hated it. It always gave me the heebie-jeebies. And then I'm telling Daniel, like, oh, this is what we're going to record about. And then what do you say?
I've got some stories. I've been there.
No, where did you go?
So let's take a step back.
Yes, go backwards.
So my father ran a transport service for funeral homes.
Of course he did, because this is my life.
And so he worked for many funeral homes, mostly in the upstate. And so a lot of times when a person dies, whether it's at a hospital or at home or whatever, somewhere else, the family is located in somewhere else. So my father would go to where the body is, pick it up, and then bring it to the funeral home that is actually going to be doing the funeral and preparing the body.
In short, he transported dead bodies.
Yes, in short, he just transported bodies from one place to another as needed. So
As needed.
Right.
It was a thriving business.
It really was. At the time when he started it in the mid to late 80s, it was a profession that didn't exist. Funeral homes took care of their own transport. So,
but as population grew,
very niche market. Funeral homes loved the idea because they didn't have to pay guys to stay at the funeral home 24/7. So
he was like a contractor for the funeral home.
Correct. So he would get calls to go to Bull Street because family members would have a family member down there who had passed away, and he would go pick the body up and then bring it to the funeral home that the family was using.
Right.
I got to go with him on a couple of calls down there when I was mid-teens.
Oh, that's creepy.
14 to 16.
So the 90s.
Late 90s, yeah.
Which is funny because
mid to late 90s.
They were winding down at that point.
Yes. So the first time we went there, my dad didn't really tell me where we were going. He just told me we were going to Columbia. And we got there. I'm like, where are we? And he's like going through the gate. He's got to tell the gate attendant or whatever. So we go in. He's like, I just got to go pick up this body. And the morgue is a separate building. Okay?
Really?
Yes. It is a standalone building. But he goes in, gets the paperwork, whatever, and he does his thing. I'm just sitting in the van.
Totally normal day, just picking up a body.
So once we leave, he actually tells me, and this is the first time, like I'd always heard of Bull Street.
Right.
But I didn't know that's where we were.
I'm going to send you to Bull Street.
We were leaving, and he tells me, he goes, you know what that was? And I was like, no. He goes, that's Bull Street. I'm like, the Bull Street? He goes, yeah, that's the insane asylum.
I'm sure he didn't tell you beforehand because you probably would have thought he was dropping you off.
So maybe. So I think I was like 15 at the time.
Were you living with him at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so 15 or older.
Yeah. And so I'm like, what? You know, I'm kind of like freaked out.
The Bull Street, right?
Yeah, I'm like freaked out, but like also like
cool.
Kind of pumped. It's cool, right? So I'm like, what's it like? And he starts telling me some stories that it's happened over the years because he started going there probably in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
The first story he tells me, he said he goes in. This was like one of the first times he went there. He goes in to the main building,
right?
Wherever it is, he has to go to get the paperwork because somebody has to go with him to unlock the morgue.
Ugh.
And so he talks to the lady at the counter, and then there's like these chairs across from the counter, and he sits down. He said there's a guy sitting there, normal clothes, and he thinks he's just waiting for whatever. And so he's sitting beside this guy, and the guy. So he's sitting there a couple minutes, and the guy just all of a sudden starts clawing at himself.
Oh, jeez.
Get them off me. Get them off me. Get them off me. And he's like clawing himself to where he's bleeding. He's like screaming, there's spiders, and just completely freaking out. My dad's just like sitting back. Oh, my God. It was a patient.
That he was just hanging out next to.
Just hanging
at the morgue.
Well, it was like
I was going to say, why is the patient at the morgue? I have questions.
Well, this wasn't the morgue. This is just where he went to get the paperwork. It was
okay, gotcha.
But like, why is the patient like just...
Because they were overcrowded and understaffed.
Chilling, So the next time I went with him, I remember I wanted to get out because...
You wanted to go inside the building?
I didn't go inside the morgue.
But you wanted to get out of the van at Bull Street?
Yes.
I wouldn't have gotten out.
So I got out of the van and I just walked up. So like it was, if I'm remembering correctly, and this was at night.
What?
It's a yeah.
Oh, geez.
It was a fairly narrow. It was longer building than it was wide, but it had like these.
Yeah, it was
stone steps that went up to it.
Right.
And then it had this big, enormous like arch door.
Uh-huh.
The door, one half of the arch was here. But it went all the way up to the point that, there was like probably 9-10 foot doors.
Right.
And they were just these huge wooden doors. You had to like pull them with both hands. And I remember standing out there and just marveling at these doors. And I didn't go in. My dad's like, you just stay out here.
I wouldn't have, I have a lot of questions about your father's parenting, especially now I'm hearing this story. But that is one good thing he did. He did not take you into the Bull Street.
And so I go sit back in the van, and I notice out of the corner of my eye, this lady, I think it was a lady, running completely naked across the grounds.
What?
Yes, completely naked across the grounds and like trying to scale a fence.
Oh my
And I remember there was two like orderlies or whoever like chasing after, and once they got close enough to her to the fence, she like stopped trying to climb the fence and just started running down the fence line away from us. And I'm just sitting in the van like, oh my God, I just saw that. It was dark. I couldn't see her boobies.
Okay.
But I remember my dad got back in the van after he loaded the body.
Totally normal. Put a dead body behind me. That's fine.
I'm like, Dad, there was this lady. She was like naked running across the sky. He goes, yeah, that happens all the time.
What?
Yeah.
See, we were raised differently.
Those were, and I think I might have gone one other time.
Is the weed eater getting closer?
And maybe they have to weed eat their whole yard.
Maybe not just chainsaw. Maybe we should be concerned.
They have to weed eat the whole yard, not just the part of the yard that's furthest away from us.
I really wish they were more considerate.
I wish they would stop too.
It is very loud in my
But I can't really say anything because of my skid steer at 5 o'clock in the morning episode.
I could have killed you that day.
Well, I had to get shit done.
I know you did at 5 a.m.
And I got it done. Mad. But it started raining. And if I hadn't started that early, I wouldn't have gotten done what needed to get done because of the rain. So
I'm surprised the police weren't called. As happy as these people are to call the police on us, I'm so surprised they didn't call the police on you that day. They're probably happy we're getting that crap out of our backyard.
Yeah, but those are the two main stories that I remember. But I also remember my dad telling me, it was just like when he would go there, patients after that first time when the guy started like clawing himself. When he would go there, he was always very aware that most of the people walking around were patients. And you couldn't necessarily tell them apart from the people who work there, which is terrifying.
They do. They look just like anybody. I mean, most people deal with some level of mental health issue or illness, and you really don't know until they do start screaming and clawing at themselves.
I'm just saying, in that facility, they weren't, because of the overcrowding, they weren't like confined. Like they could.
No, they usually are. They're not prisoners. Technically.
I mean, they were coming and going and interacting with the staff and any of the public that was in there pretty much at free will, which, like I'm saying, is really terrifying if you have to go there to do something like what my dad was.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, especially if they don't tell you and you're just kind of in there. But like to them, that's normal. To the patients, to the staff, that's normal because they're not prisoners.
Yeah.
They live there. They're, if you watch documentaries about people that are institutionalized, you see them and they have free reign, within a floor. They're allowed to go amongst each other unless something happens and then they're put somewhere. But they're not prisoners. Most of them are not. But there was, I think, a section of this hospital, and I don't know for sure because I did not take a note on this, but there was a section for the criminally insane.
I think there definitely was a section of Bull Street that was for
people that were criminally insane, the more violent and the people that were in there because they did something illegal. But most mental health institutions, they roamed.
It makes me wonder, because of the overcrowding, if some of those offenders got mixed in with kind of the general population.
It wouldn't surprise me.
And that could have been why a lot of the violence and things occurred.
One of the stories I read, it's too graphic. I don't feel comfortable reading it.
Sure.
It was one of the interviews from a former nurse, and she went into it and about the assault of another nurse. And I mean,
I don't know.
That guy was violent, and yet he was out and he attacked her. Like, he laid in wait for her.
I don't know if you remember when they were deciding to close it down. I vaguely remember it because it's not something, I wasn't watching the news every night and staying up to date on current events.
No?
When I was a teenager, but
I
do remember there being a lot of kind of unearthing of stories and stuff when they were talking about closing it down. It was like people were like, yes, please, let's close this down. This is a horrible, and a lot of that stuff.
I don't remember.
A lot of that stuff really came to light then because it just kind of been building.
Right. Well, I didn't live here. I didn't grow up in South Carolina until we moved here when I was 8. So technically I grew up here, but I didn't grow up. Like, I didn't learn about Bull Street until I moved to Columbia in college. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't know what it was because we were in the upstate and my family lived in Columbia, but we wouldn't drive through downtown. We would go around 26 to 77 and go to my grandparents that way. So we never were in downtown. So until I went to USC, I didn't know what it was. But when I came to USC, I quickly learned what Bull Street was. And I quickly learned that the population of people that were released from that hospital stayed in downtown. I had some very concerning things happen with people who, I'm not going to say they're insane or anything like that, but it was a homeless man, one homeless man that I don't know why, but I always had interactions with at different places in downtown Columbia. And he scared the crap out of me. He tried to get in my car. He banged on my window. He tried to open my door. Multiple interactions with this one person. But I went to college down there in 2003. Mm-hmm. So it was around the time they officially closed it down. Yeah. And when they closed it down, like for good, they released people, which is terrifying.
It's funny you say that about, learning about what Bull Street was from your perspective. Growing up, being born here, growing up here, it was like one of those phrases like, I'm going to take you to Bull Street, or you're as crazy as those folks on Bull Street. Like it being a reference. It's something I remember from when I was like 4 or 5, just hearing adults talk. Like it was just something.
Well, I learned about it in my late teens, early 20s. I knew exactly what it was when people said it because I went to USC.
But yeah, I mean, growing up, it was just like, that was just common speak, you know what I mean? Right. And so it's just part of the vernacular here.
Right. And I think most places have that, like kind of here, it was Marshall Pickens up here.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what that was because people would be like, you're going to go to Marshall Pickens, which was the mental institution up in Greenville. Yeah. But yeah, with Bull Street, I didn't learn about that until I went to college, and I learned about it very quickly.
Yeah, it's dark history.
It is. And I know there's a lot of new population in South Carolina, and that's got to be who lived there. They got to be the ones that live there, because I don't think anybody who was raised in this area would voluntarily be like, I want to live in a mental institution. It is historic. It is very, very
chic.
I was going to say chic, but also slay. Is that what the kids say? It's slay. My daughter's probably, she doesn't listen, but
I mean, there was some slaying going on.
You got that right.
People were slain.
I would not want to live there.
No, absolutely no.
I knew they built the baseball stadium there.
If somebody said, "Hey, we'll give you this townhome in
for free,"
nope, I'm good. Thanks. Nope.
No, I'm good. I will stay over here and pay my mortgage happily.
No.
Yeah, it just seems like it's got a lot of dark history, and I read article after article. I'm going to link all of the websites that I used. I'm sure there's books about it, but I didn't read a book about it. I just was researching it, and then Daniel was like, I have stories, and perfect.
Yeah, it's I'm actually trying to look up a picture right now of the morgue.
Oh. All I think of when we say morgue is the morgue at the Crescent.
Yeah.
Which is under the Crescent. So I've never been in any other morgue. That's the morgue I've been in. And so that's my only point of reference.
Even then, that building, I remember looking at it, it's just very, very dark. Not because it
probably gave you an eerie feeling.
Not because it was dark outside, but it was a very dark energy. You're
heavy.
talking about people who died there that suffered from mental illness, that probably died in horrible conditions, who lived in horrible conditions, who experienced just the worst of humanity and then died there. How could there not be a dark energy there?
Right. There's so much energy and so many people that have moved in and out of that building because everything is movement. It's energy, it's frequencies, everything, light and energy and bodies. And we all have our own. And when you're putting all of that into one space and just constant in and out, in and out, in and out, of course, it's going to be something.
You can go there. I don't know how it is now, but I remember going there.
Oh, it looks like just the place to be now.
Just the weight of it.
Oh yeah, just driving by it looked
heavy.
Yeah.
Super heavy.
Oh yeah, that is somewhere I never wanted to be. I had no interest in going to. I think one of my parents' friends actually worked there for a long time.
Really?
Yes, one of their longtime friends. I think she was a nurse there for a long time, but I don't feel comfortable calling her up and being like, "Hey." So I'm just going to think in my head that I think she did work there for many, many years.
Wow.
Yeah, but that is our episode for the day. What you think?
I think it's good. I think the best thing for the listeners to do is just take this, what we've talked about, and run with it. Do some searches. Look at the images.
Look at the pictures, the videos.
Yeah. Just run with it and spend some time kind of going down that rabbit hole, because it is super interesting.
There is a video on YouTube, and I'll try to link it if I think about it, but it was a drone that went, I believe, into the building.
Really?
Yes, and it was before they locked it down and before they redid everything. So it was shown, the building was shown as it was before they made it into a living space and made it really just chic and popular and just slay.
Isn't that quaint?
I cringed myself when I just said that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm really trying to branch out and get more comfortable researching and finding things to share with you, because I know this is a little dark, but this is, what the hell
No
is
idea.
that? What was that? That wasn't a dog, was it? But I'm really trying to branch out and find different things to bring you, things that are fascinating and interesting to me that you might find fascinating as well. So thank you for listening, and give me a like, give me a follow, give me a whatever you do. And until next time, they'll see you later.